This is Chicken Philosophy, Martin Luther Part 30, in which I will continue reading this book, you know the one. A funny thing happened, though. I started recording a while back, and then I came to discover that I was only recording the audio. So here's what we're going to do. You and I, together, are going to sit and listen to that. And then, when we get to the end, we're going to pick up right where I left off. And I'm your host for today, Gwydion. I'm back. So we've managed to move. Let's put up a map, shall we? Might as well use this space. I managed to move the kimono, the three-part kimono that BT wears, of which I wear the middle part, with the hat and my Saint Benedict. Let's put Saint Benedict up there. I mean, that's the meaning of it. Basically says, drink your own poison, Satan. It's when I need to quit smoking or something, then I wear this to remind me. Anyway, right, where were we? Yeah, so I managed to move the kimono and the hat and the necklace, but the lamen, BT's lamen, yarmulke, and ring haven't made it yet. So once they make it, it's Friday, and we're not planning to go until at least Monday. So I don't know if BT will be back next time to do Secret of the Golden Flower. Edward might have to fill in, but at least I can be here when it's my turn. From now until whenever, I don't know. And on top of all that, we have a beverage. As you can see from the unusual angle for Chicken Philosophy, my coffee is black and sugar-free today. Cheers. Tastes black and sugar-free. And also, yeah, sure, why not? I'll figure it out on the fly. I forgot to work out an incense holder or burner, but I have these. I've talked about these before. I had something very similar to these when I was young. My dad would meditate, and he would light the long incense. He would light it with a match and then sit down with the, all that stuff. Anyway, I've talked about it on the Secret of the Golden Flower series. In fact, I did a full demonstration with audio overlay of me teaching it while you're watching me perform it. If that's something of interest to you, then Editor Edward, what timestamp can they skip to in that particular video? 40 minutes and 20 seconds. Thank you, Editor Edward. So you can skip to that timestamp in this video if you want to watch me do that whole thing that my dad used to do while I was growing up. And he would light the big incense, but I, found these at Cost Plus, something very similar to these. And so I enjoyed lighting my tiny incense. Well, he had his big incense from the Bodhi Tree bookstore. The late Bodhi Tree bookstore. So here we've got, I don't have any dice or anything, but we've got rose, myrrh, nirvana, jasmine, magnolia, patchouli, raindrops, frangipani, myrrh amber, ylang, lemongrass, frankincense, sandalwood, orange blossom, and lavender. Since we have both myrrh and frankincense, and I don't know, this thing behind me feels a little churchy. Doesn't it feel churchy? So here we've got the frankincense and the myrrh. Now, my hazy understanding, of frankincense and myrrh from a magical perspective is that myrrh basically manifests things and kind of opens a doorway in the material world for whatever vibration is there to appear. And frankincense elevates the vibration. So the combination of the two means, the manifestation of a higher vibration. Man. Sometimes you just gotta say, man. Maybe not you, but me, on account of my proximity to the 70s. I know that started out as there were certain assholes who would refer to young black men as boy, or even a fully grown, or even elderly, even older than the person speaking. They'd call them boy as a derogatory. And so it became popular among each other to refer to each other as man, just to kind of like counteract that habit that assholes had. Anyway, so that was, from what I understand, like 80 years ago-ish, maybe more. And then gradually over time, you know how things gradually over time change, like the word woke, for instance. Man became something that, hippies would say, or like, Chong from Cheech and Chong.
I think we're back, man.
I'm sure Editor Edward shows a lovely clip to show an example of Chong saying man and the context in which he says man. But I think that these days, I don't know, people, it's like a Gen Xer being nostalgic about the cool boomers and using their terminology ironically may not compute, may not fit the paradigm or reality of like a Gen Alpha, for instance. So that's why I'm explaining. There's people who are more my age or older that don't need the explanation. But anyway, these days, if you say man, people would say, please, say person. Pass me the joint, person. Come on, person. Hey, person. That's not the same as man. Hey, man. What's going on, man? Hey, man. In the 80s, it became dude. People would say, what's up, dude? Hey, dude. Anyway, never mind. Okay, so we've got the frankincense and myrrh burning. We've got the black coffee. Really nothing else to do except for the reading. So now, if you've been following along the Martin Luther series here on Chicken Philosophy, if you haven't, click here and you can start at the beginning. The beginning is a good place to start. Just make sure you watch the whole episode. If you're bored halfway through the beginning and you're like, I really don't want to watch the full episode, Gwydion, then skip to the last 8 minutes. Skip to when you see me show up. Then it gets fun. All right. So we're in the middle of Martin Luther's diss track. So this was the Papists wanted to hear what the Lutherans had to say without Martin Luther there. So they got everybody together and they were hearing what people said. And Martin Luther was hiding out at a castle 100 some odd kilometers away. And someone had told him that the Papists wanted to know why he chose to add the phrase alone, or add the word alone to a particular point at which St. Paul said that a person is not redeemed by works but by faith. Martin Luther said by faith alone. So there's it's very common in the English-speaking world, the debate about by faith alone. So it's interesting that it kind of goes back to a choice Martin Luther made when he was translating. All right. I even remember St. Paul, played by Anthony Hopkins in the movie. I remember that role. He's playing St. Paul, and he's saying faith alone. In English, he's saying out loud faith alone. And so the whole debate was that the Papists, i.e. the Roman Catholics, were saying, Paul didn't say that. He said by faith. He said not by works, but by faith. But Martin Luther's like, yeah, but it makes more sense if you say by faith alone. So I didn't change anything. I just clarified the meaning for German speakers and the English speakers subsequently. And then, yeah, in the movie, they have Paul saying it. So it kind of like, oh, little footnote under that memory of that line in that movie. That's what chicken philosophy is all about. Adding footnotes to those lines in those movies. Here we go. Quote, no works, end quote. Quote, without works, end quote. Quote, not by works, end quote. If it is not, quote, offensive, end quote, to preach, quote, without works, end quote. Quote, no works, end quote. Quote, not by works, end quote. Then why is it, quote, offensive, end quote, to preach, quote, by faith alone, end quote? Well, because you're Martin Luther, not St. Paul? I guess would be the obvious response. Playing devil's advocate, and by devil I mean the Pope. Pope's advocate, devil's advocate, same thing. We've all seen the Keanu Reeves movie. Not the devil's advocate, Constantine, or The Matrix, or John Wick. Pick your Keanu Reeves movie. Bill and Ted, it's all there. Continuing. And the, quote, offense, end quote, even increases. St. Paul rejects not only commonplace works, but, quote, works of the law, end quote. Now someone could easily take offense at that even more and say that the law is condemned and accursed before God, and we ought to be doing nothing but evil, as they did in Romans 3:8, quote, why not do evil that good may come, end quote. This is the very thing that one fanatic started to do in our time. St. Paul and I wanted to give such offense. We preach so strongly against works and insist on faith alone, for no other reason than that people may be offended, stumble, and fall, in order that he's being facetious, obviously. He's saying, St. Paul and I say this for these shitty reasons. He's being clever with his words. He's saying, oh, so you're accusing me and St. Paul of this shitty thing. Anyway, all right. Yes, in order that they may learn to know that they are not saved by their good works, but only by Christ's death and resurrection. Now, if they cannot be saved by the good works of the law, how much less shall they be saved by bad works, and without the law? Ergo, it does not follow that if good works do not help, then bad works do help. No more than it follows that if the sun cannot help blind persons see, then night and darkness must help them see. It amazes me that someone would disagree over a case as evident as this. Please tell me, yes or no, is Christ's death and resurrection a work that we can accomplish? Certainly not. And nor is it the work of any law. Christ's death and resurrection alone saves us and frees us from sin, as Paul says in Romans 4:25. He, quote, who was handed over to death for our trespasses and was raised for our justification, end quote. Furthermore, can you tell me, what is the work by which we receive Christ's death and resurrection? It cannot be any external accomplishment, but simply the internal faith of the heart. Faith alone, indeed, all alone, and without any works, lays hold of this death and resurrection when the gospel is preached. Why, then, this raging and raving, this making of heretics and burning them at the stake? He's not being hyperbolic. It was 1530. The case itself, at its core, clearly proves that faith alone grasps Christ's death and resurrection without any works. His death and resurrection, bracket parentheses, alone, end bracket parentheses, are our life and our righteousness. If then the fact itself is so obvious that faith alone delivers, grasps, and imparts this life and righteousness, then why not say so? It is no heresy that faith alone lays hold of Christ and gives life. Yet it must be heresy if someone says it out loud. Isn't that crazy, stupid, irrational? They admit that this conclusion is correct, but label the saying of it wrong. But nothing can be both right and wrong at the same time. To be fair, what they said was that you added a word in your translation that wasn't there in the original, the word alone, thus altering slightly the meaning of the words in their perspective. Instead of by faith, it's by faith alone. Different emphasis, different kind of message. Your better argument was that, oh, well, in Latin, that's how you'd say it, but in German, you say it like this. All this other stuff, you're just blowing smoke, dude. Oh, shit. I haven't been recording at all. And we're all caught up. Okay. Now we're in the same space-time continuum with my voice. I don't know, something. I'll keep reading. Indeed, am I the only one, or even the first, to say that faith alone justifies? Ambrose and Augustine said it before me. Yeah, well, if Ambrose and Augustine jumped off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff? I had to. I'm sorry. You set me up. Okay, anyway, as well as many others. If they are going to read St. Paul and understand him, they should say the same thing. They can say nothing else. Paul's words are too strong. They allow no works. None. That's N-O-N-E, not N-U-N. That's a different kind of heresy. Which Martin Luther also encourages. Provided she gives consent. The nun, I mean. It's in an earlier episode of Martin Luther on Chicken Philosophy. It's a whole thing. Anyway, now, if it is not any work, then it must be faith alone. They have to get married. He encourages nuns. Nuns who want to remain nuns, go ahead and stay nuns. Nuns who don't want to be nuns anymore, your oath doesn't count. God doesn't care if you took an oath to do something so stupid as be a nun. Just leave. Find a husband. Do the wild thing. And, be a mother. And, Martin Luther was progressive for early 1500s. Not for 1970s or 80s or 90s or early 21st century. Still wanted them to get married and be a mother and housewife, but he told them they didn't have to be a nun anymore, which made him a rebel in 1530 or whatever. Okay. What? Now, if it is not any work, then it must be faith alone. What a nice, constructive, inoffensive doctrine that would be if people were taught that they could be saved by works as well as faith. That would be as much as to say that it is not Christ's death alone that takes away our sins, but that our works too have something to do with it. What's love got to do? That would be a fine honoring of Christ's death, to say that it is helped by our works, and that whatever it does, our works can do too, so that we are his equal in strength and goodness. But this is the very devil. He can never quit abusing the blood of Christ. Let's take a moment to visualize the devil abusing the blood of Christ in the most inappropriate way. Go ahead, take a moment, just go nuts. Oh man, I too judge him for that creative but inappropriate thing he's doing. All right, where were we? The heart of the matter requires us to say, quote, faith alone justifies, end quote. And the character of our German language leads us to say it like that. Also, I have the precedent of the Holy Fathers. Further, the risks to the faithful compel it. so they do not keep holding on to their works and wander away from faith and lose Christ, particularly in these days, because they have gotten so used to works for so long they must be ripped away from them by force. You used to say not to do that. Now you're... Based on these reasons, it is more than the right thing to do. It is necessary. We proclaim it as openly and completely as possible. Quote, faith alone saves, without works, end quote. I only regret that I did not also add the word, quote, any, end quote, and say, quote, without any works or any laws, end quote. So that it would have been expressed with absolute clarity. Therefore, I will stay in the New Testament, and all the papal donkeys can go crazy over it. They shall not take it from me. That's enough for now. If God gives me grace, then I'll have more to say in my pamphlet on justification. Now, to your second question. I was wondering if we were ever going to get to the second question. It's been 3 episodes of this same letter. Now to your second question. Whether the departed saints intercede for us. I shall give you only a brief answer for now, for I am thinking of publishing a sermon on the angels, in which, God willing, I shall treat this point more fully. Oh, treat the point more fully. Just the tip of the point. First, you know that the papacy not only teaches that the saints in heaven intercede for us, but the saints have also been made gods. I know enough about the papists, Martin, to know that that's an exaggeration. They would definitely disagree with that statement. In any century, the saints have not become gods. There's only one God. Don't you know your own fucking religion, Martin? What's wrong with you? Oh, you want to emphasize the whole pagan thing. Oh, the Catholics are pagans. If you want to be Christian instead of pagan, then you should go with me. Even though the Catholics are the one who invented the false dichotomy between Christians and pagans. I guess it's not false if you're like, are you a loyal follower of the Starbucks logo or not? I guess not. Then you are on the other side of the false dichotomy. No, it's a real dichotomy at that point. It's a created one. If by false you mean... It's not true like nature didn't come up with it unless you consider that...
You cannot go against nature, because when you do, go against nature, it's part of nature too.
Thank you, David J. and the band. Thought I was going to say gang, didn't you? What? Where was I? First, you know that the... Yeah, okay. Parentheses. Even though we cannot know this because the scriptures tell us nothing about it, end quote. Right, saints being made gods. Yeah, and also the church says nothing that would imply that saints become gods. Okay. They must be our patrons on whom we are to call, some of whom never even existed. Though, to be fair... the serpent told Adam and Eve that they'd become gods if they ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and it's never really clarified whether he was lying or not. So humans might have been made gods way back in the day. I mean, 6,000 years-ish, right? Is that how long ago? I'm fucking with you. I'm not a creationist. All right, I'm just playing within the ballpark of stupid. Not to say this is stupid. Not to say it's not stupid. Not to say, like, you can be like an Episcopalian, a Lutheran, or even a Catholic, even an Orthodox Christian, and not be a creationist. It might be a fine line to walk, and you might have to sit next to creationists at church, but it can be done. I would dare say it's being done right now, all around the world. Anyway, what? Yes. They must be our patrons on whom we are to call, some of whom never existed. Some of whom never even existed. To each saint, they have attributed... Okay. If by lowercase God you define it as a being which you call upon to ask favors, then if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, then yeah, they are kind of treating the saints like gods. But they would never say that they are gods or that they have become gods. But the way, and I've mentioned this before, the way that a Hindu, for example, might approach Ganesh or Shiva or Lakshmi is basically the same as the way that a devout Catholic or Orthodox person might approach like Saint Anthony or Saint James or Saint Who's-Its or Saint What's-Its or Saint Martha or Saint... I'm not casting a value judgment. Martin Luther is, and most Protestants follow in his wake as far as that goes. I personally find that one of the nice things about the Catholic Church is all the saints. It's nice. Right. Okay, where were we? It's nice and pagan. Nice and pagan. A little comforting. Not so Christian as these Martin Luther types. It's just a matter of personal preference. Gwydion is a Welsh god, if you didn't know. Or, as it's more appropriately pronounced,
Gwydion.
Thank you, person who made this video. You can learn more about
Gwydion
by clicking there. But that's not... I indirectly got the name by way of Marion Zimmer Bradley, who had used the name for King Arthur's son. I think the idea would have been that King Arthur's son, with his sister, right? I think, not with Guinevere, was named after the Welsh god also. But I wasn't named after the Welsh god directly. I was named after the son of King Arthur, if that makes sense. Never mind. All right. Yes, to each saint they have attributed a specific power and strength. One controls fire, another water, another pestilence, fever, and all kinds of diseases. None of that sounds very familiar from any of the descriptions of any of the saints, but you would know better than I, being that you were a Catholic monk, a celibate Catholic monk for decades. And now you're having a very strong flow reversal publicly and defining an entire culture for centuries by doing it. Well done, by the way, as far as like people having an impact on history and others. But not very well done as far as exactly, specifically what that impact was. But I will say that it's probably better than the guy sitting next to you would have made if he had done something similar and you hadn't existed. But it's not quite as good as the other person sitting next to you might have been. But I don't know. Who knows? It'd be fun to see those parallel timelines and spot the differences. All right. Indeed. Now God has pretty much nothing to do, letting the saints work, acting in God's place. These papists themselves are not aware of this heretical practice. They are quietly putting up their pipes and presently preening and primping themselves with this teaching about the intercession of the saints. All right. I shall defer this subject for the present, but you can bet I shall not forget it and allow their preening and primping to go unpaid for. Well, I look forward to hearing when you finally get around to a thorough... You're clearly against it. This letter goes on, though, well, for a little bit. Let's see here. Second, you know that there is not a single... his point number 1 and point number 2 about the question of saints. He's only going to briefly go into his point number 1, but he has more points. So, okay, he's still on the subject. That's good. Second, you know that there is not a single word of God commanding us to call on either angels or saints to intercede for us. And we have no example of it in the Scriptures. For we find that angels spoke with the fathers and the prophets, but none was ever asked to intercede for them. Even the patriarch Yaakov, good old Yaakov, Jacob, you might know him as Jacob. All right, sorry. Did not ask the angel with whom he wrestled for any intercession, but merely took from him the blessing. If you know what I mean. Wrestling. Sorry. We find the exact opposite in the book of Revelation. Who was that man, Daddy? Oh, that was an angel. I was wrestling with him. And that thing that you saw me take from him was his blessing. Okay, Daddy, I will remember that and tell my children and my children's children for generations to come. And then one day they'll write it down, and then the Greeks will take it, and then... Probably how it went. And that would have been Dina. Unless it was a little boy whose voice hadn't changed yet. All right. We find the exact opposite in the book of Revelation. The man coughed up the blessing. No. The angel would not allow himself to be worshipped by John. Revelation 22:9. Thus, the worship of saints shows itself to be nothing but human twaddle. Man's own invention apart from the Word of God and the Scriptures. I've noticed whenever I invoke an angel and try to bow down to it, they say, no, only for the Holy One himself. Because in the matter of worship, however, it is not right to undertake anything without God's command. Whoever does so is tempting God. Oh, don't tempt me. It is therefore neither to be advised nor tolerated that folks should call upon the departed saints to intercede for them. Regular parentheses, or teach others to invoke them. End parentheses. This is to be condemned, and believers should be taught to avoid it. Ergo, I will also not advise it and shackle my conscience with other people's sin. It was not easy for me to escape from the saints, because I was so steeped in it, and it nearly drowned me. The light of the gospel now glows so brightly that there is no reason to remain in darkness. We all know what we should do. Yes, wrestle. In addition, this practice is not only dangerous, it is offensive. To worship without turning to Christ. Because people so easily get used to turning from Christ, they quickly learn to put more confidence in the saints than in Christ himself. Our nature is, in any case, all too prone to flee from God and Christ and to trust in others. Indeed, it is hard enough for us to learn to trust in God and Christ, though we have vowed, bracket parentheses, in baptism, and bracket parentheses, and are duty-bound to do so. That's D-U-T-Y, not D-O-O-D-I-E. Here in Goa, the patron saint is St. Francis Xavier. The other St. Francis, not the cool St. Francis. The other saint, the guy who started the Jesuits and went and converted a bunch of people in India. And kind of when you hear about that, you're like, oh, that makes me a little sick and ashamed. Well, they love him here. They've still got his body, and they bring it out. Trying to be respectful, just in case. They bring it out every year, and then people come from all over, and thousands of people line up to touch the box that this not very pleasant looking. He's not wrapped in bandages or anything. He's just, there he is. That's a 400-year-old corpse. Yep, it certainly is 500 years, 600 years, however old, between 500 and 600 years. And there was some controversy where, I heard about some hate speech. People were protesting because of hate speech. And I was like, what is this hate speech? And this far right former representative of a Hindu political group had said that they should test the DNA of the mummy to make sure it's St. Francis Xavier. So people were protesting, Catholics were protesting against that hate speech. Clearly designed to take away the faith, whatever. Yeah, I can kind of see where Martin Luther's coming from a little bit. Yeah, no, it's silly, but it's kind of cute. Kind of cute in a way, kind of sweet in a way. There's various kinds of Mahayana and other Buddhists that, they build a stupa that supposedly has like a relic inside, like a thigh bone of Buddha or some famous Buddhist sage or something. So I think it's pretty natural. Everybody wants to have a bone of a saint, whether it be Buddhist or Christian. It's kind of interesting. In Jainism was, of course, older than Buddhism, and possibly much older than Buddhism, and definitely older than Christianity, and possibly older than, at least any recognizable form of Judaism or Abrahamic religion. They have a thing where none of the gods are real, except for humans, men, but they maybe mean humans, probably they mean men. But anyway, who become enlightened. So when a person, achieves mastery, a human being achieves, full enlightenment and omniscience in the Jainist sense, and in a Buddhist sense. I mean, Lord Buddha was kind of thought to be all-knowing in a way, or at least he knew things he wasn't. There were stories where it's like, did he not know that was there? But then other times he already knows something. So he's like psychic, but not 100%. It seems like. Where anyway, the idea of a Tirthankara is that they're omniscient and enlightened, and that they're worshipped by Jainists. So you're not. It's not so much about, like in Buddhism. Buddhism was kind of a Jainism 2.0, in my opinion. I'll point at the end of this sidetrack to a place where you can hear me ramble more about that. But anyway, Gwydion forgot to point to the corner of the screen, so just hold out and wait for the chicken cluck, and then click the link in the middle of the screen after the chicken cluck, the end screen. Rather than it being like, hey, let's worship the enlightened humans, it was, let's become enlightened humans. Where in Jainism, there's like a path for that. Like, well, if you are among the few who feel called to try to maybe get toward enlightenment, then okay, all right. But for the lay people, just worship the statue. That's a statue representing a human that became enlightened. There is no Shiva, there is no Ganesh. All these gods are fake, but this shit's real. So the Shramana traditions, like Buddhism and Jainism, go back to non-Vedic ancient religion, where what we today call Hindu goes back to Vedic. They wouldn't have called it Hindu in Lord Buddha's day, but there was Vedic and non-Vedic. And Buddha was also kind of anti-caste system, where the Vedic was defining the caste system. So that's history. And the thing I was alluding to yesterday, and I used Carl Jung and Dream and the Beard of Gilgamesh as an example, because I just didn't want to go into it. And by I, of course, I mean Edward in this context, was that these days, and the thing is, like this, that's where it's like, should I point it out or not point it out? That when people say, oh, well, Buddha is a part of Hinduism, he's an avatar of Vishnu. It's kind of like, yeah, someone said that. Yeah, people do say that. Somebody at some point said that, maybe even 500 years ago, maybe even more. But if you're talking about reality, but it's like when someone says someone's an incarnation of a god, how can you say, well, technically, no, that's scientifically, historically inaccurate? Who am I to say that he's not the incarnation of Vishnu? And who is anybody to say he's not the incarnation of Vishnu? And, if people want to include Lord Buddha as part of their Hinduism, I'd say include Muhammad too, include Jesus. Just ignore the part about the one true way thing. Just try not to pay any attention to that aspect of those people. But, because what became known as Hinduism was an embracing of the people, what they call states now, like, the religion, the Shiva religion, the Ganesh religion, the Krishna religion, all these different religions, and kind of piecing them together into this amalgamation. But then the Abrahamics came in and said, our religion is true and your religion is false. And they're like, our what? Our religion? What is this word? And then, so over time, the modern day idea of this is Hindu and this is not Hindu is a much more recent thing. But as far as Vedic, there was a time when there was what was Vedic and there was what was kind of anti-Vedic, what was ignoring Vedic, what was going on alongside in the same general area as Vedic, but definitely not, and rooted in other traditions that are native to the land, as opposed to the Vedic religion, which came in from Persia. Some say, allegedly. Sorry. What? Don't be controversial, Edward. Right. I don't know. I think we're done. Are we done? I think we're done. All right. Well, the good news is next time will be Secret of the Golden Flower. Edward will be filling in for BT. But I'm back. So every 3 episodes you'll be seeing this face. Whatever the hell I'm wearing. But I mean Gwydion as opposed to Edward. You get it right. And I guess that's it. I don't know if this was a good one. But it was different. Especially different from like the past few. So it's looking like it's going to be after the 24th or 25th. I'll be putting the bookshelf together, so we're going to be out and about and roaming here and there for another 2 weeks. Yeah, that's 2 weeks before the bookshelf comes back. There was one point where I said like 4 days ago or something that within a week I'll be back, or within 2 weeks I'll be back. No, after 2 weeks from now. Not that you care, but I'm looking forward to it. All right. That's enough out of me for now. I'm going to go ahead and bid you a heartfelt and sincere
Padikamiyo Irya Vahiyae Virahanae Gamna Gamne Panak Gamne Piyak Gamne Haryak Gamne Osa Uttinga Panaga Daga